Welcome back to the other episode of the It's Just Sport paper review podcast with hersport.ie. Don't forget to follow us on social on Twitter at hersport.ie, at JoanneOR_OX, and on Instagram at hersport.ie and at Joanne OR. It's obviously been just a bit of a crazy weekend, and I feel like we've done really well to get through January. And we're now in February. And for anyone who knows me, they will know I'm currently getting very excited because the month of February is the first time in 200 years we have a square in our calendar officially. So things like that get me very hyped. But all day Sunday, Niamh, I don't know about you, all day Sunday, Niamh, I felt I was going a bit crazy. I started singing a lot of mass hymns. I don't really miss going to mass, I don't. But I was just singing mass hymns. Niamh, how are you, Niamh? What were you up to?
Well, I mean, it was a bit of a rainy weekend up in Dublin. I'm not sure about down your end of the country, but yeah, I mean, we were just counting down the hours to watch Ireland's fittest family, so that's a guilty pleasure. Maybe not so guilty, but the quarterfinals of Ireland's fittest family were on yesterday evening, so one of the highlights of the weekend while we're still getting through this lockdown. But yeah, very excited to have our next episode of the paper review out. We're going to focus on international sport. So what have we got in store?
Yeah, so it's been an incredibly busy weekend of sport. We've had AFLW, we've had athletics, we've had NBA, and my favorite time of the year, guys, it's Super Bowl week. Now you're thinking, this is a women in sports podcast. Why is she focusing on the Super Bowl? First of all, Super Bowl, very friendly to the women, because for the first time this weekend, we have got a female referee. So that's right. Sarah Thomas is going to be officiating in Tampa Bay at the Super Bowl this weekend. Thomas, who is a former college basketball player, actually began her officiating career in 1996 and worked on her first varsity high school game in 99. That's very American, like varsity high school. But she was the first woman to officiate a major college football game, the first to officiate a bowl game. And then in 2015, Thomas was hired as the first full-time female official in NFL history. She will serve as a down judge as part of a 7-person on-field officiating team for the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay on the 7th of February. For anyone wondering what's a down judge, it's the person who stands at the side and declares whether a person's feet were inbounds when they picked up the ball. So it's actually one of the harder jobs on the NFL pitch because your eyes have to be on the ball, on the feet, and you also have to make sure that they have control of the ball. Now, if anyone knows in the NFL, that is muddy water. So Sarah, best of luck. If you are listening, we'll tag you in this on social. But yeah, no, more power to her, I think.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we're seeing some big changes in the US at the moment in relation to coaching and refereeing. There's definitely been a lot of opportunity presented in the last year or two, which is brilliant to see. I guess that brings us on to basketball. We have some news in basketball as Natalie Sago and Jenna Schroeder are going to make up 2/3 of the crew assigned to the Charlotte at Orlando game. The first time in NBA history that 2 women have been assigned to work a regular season contest together. Sean Wright was picked to be crew chief, Sago the referee, and Schroeder the umpire. So this is more opportunity, and we're seeing more women involved in refereeing. So we should have a look at the basketball this weekend. I think you've a little bit more basketball related news for us.
The basketball related news, yeah, that's true, because I think we all know Chicago Bulls, Detroit Pistons, bad boys legend that is Dennis Rodman. If anyone has seen The Last Dance, they will know him maybe as Carmen Electra's ex. They might know him as the crazy teammate from Michael Jordan, but he is an NBA legend and a Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame member. But it's not really about Dennis Rodman, because over the last few weeks, the National Women's Soccer League, the NWSL, had their draft a couple of weeks ago, and they actually drafted his daughter, Trinity. So Trinity Rodman, she is a rising star in the US Soccer Youth National Teams, and she was selected number 1 by the Washington Spirit. She's actually only 18, so she's going pro directly away from college. So that's actually very exciting for her, because it's quite rare that's done. But we're seeing it now more kind of with the global pandemic. But yeah, Trinity Rodman is going to be on the books. And actually, if anyone is interested, I know there was a really good piece on her on ESPN, I think. Our very own Sligo, Kathleen McNamee, actually wrote it. So if anyone is interested in figuring out anything about Trinity Rodman, go on to that, because it is a very good in-depth about how she came to be the soccer player she is today. She doesn't like basketball. I saw on her Instagram stories. Funnily enough, she's not a basketball person. It's probably...
I mean, these things happen. They happen.
Yeah, I think when you're surrounded by it, I think you eventually either turn off or really turn on. But Niamh, we have been following the Irish abroad. Let's forget about the Americans for a second, because the Irish abroads have been absolutely on fire. You're here to tell us a little bit about the athletics, aren't you?
Yeah, no, it's been an absolutely brilliant weekend for athletics. Nadia Power has, jumped into 2021 just as she left 2020, blazing down the track. She set a new national record, a national indoor record of 2:02:44, and took second place in the 800 meters in Vienna on Saturday. So this is just behind, just ahead of Schieffer Butner's record, previous record, which is 2:02:46, I believe. So very exciting for Nadia. She's on fire at the moment. Like last year was a fantastic year for her. I know we spoke about it briefly in our first episode of the It's Just Sport podcast. So if anybody wants to learn a bit more about Nadia and athletics, head over there. But also Kieran Neville and Sarah Lavin also picked up PBs at the competition. So we'll be discussing a bit more about athletics later and the brilliant results that we've had this weekend.
Yeah, so at the minute we're going to flick over our attention to the AFLW season that's going on down in Australia. Niamh, I have no idea if you managed to get some time away from Fittest Families to tune in to the West Coast Eagles versus Adelaide Crows, which was on TG Car, and that was brought to us by Gym Plus Coffee. So for anyone who's wondering, on the Eagles, we had Aisling McCarthy of Tipperary, and we had the two Kelly sisters, Niamh and Grace from Mayo, and also for Adelaide, we had Ailish Considine from Clare. So the Adelaide Crows actually ran out comprehensive 56-18 winners over the Eagles, and Ailish actually scored a goal as part of their success. It was actually kind of funny because I think she scored towards the end of the fourth quarter, and like the way her teammates like surrounded her, it was like actually one of the cutest things on the planet. But there was a bit of, I'm not going to say controversy, but there has been a bit of a negative light, shall we say, on the AFLW at the minute. So for anyone who doesn't know, Bríd Stacks, former Cork 10-time ladies All-Ireland football winner. So she's gone over to Sydney to play with them and Cora Staunton. And she was involved in a bit of a collision about 2 weeks ago during the preseason with a girl called Ebony Marinoff. Now, Ebony Marinoff went into Bríd Stacks, some would say very heavily and against the rules. Some, obviously, if you're a Crows fan, you would say that she went in legally and within the boundaries of the rules. Now, Bríd Stacks actually broke her neck. She was millimeters away from paralysis. And I think for people who aren't really aware, she's currently over there at the minute with her husband and her young son, Carrick and Carrick Og. So a very scary incident for her. But Ebony Marinoff was due to be cited by the Rules Committee. They went obviously forward as part of the Adelaide Crows and they appealed it. She was originally banned for a couple of weeks, but the Adelaide Crows appealed it on the basis that they had secondary evidence, so a second camera angle, which showed the way that Ebony came in. She actually was in apparently a legal tackle. So they ruled for Ebony Marinoff. So she was declared to play actually for the Adelaide Crows. She was actually kind of in and out of play, and it was really weird watching her because you kind of knew her from the controversy. And then when Bríd Stacks had released a really good article with the Irish Examiner, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's unbelievable. She talks about being millimeters away from paralysis. She talks about basically waking up on the pitch and not being able to move her body for quite some time. The game was actually abandoned as a result. But she basically spoke about how no one contacted her when Ebony actually got off the, I'm not going to say get off the hook, because I think that's wrong on Ebony, but how she got off, and she found out on the bottom of her TV screen and she burst into tears. And I thought the weird thing about the whole thing is that the AFLW, they're in like a bubble at the minute, so they all fly together, come together, that kind of thing. And the weird thing was that on the front of Bríd Stacks' flight, going over to Perth to play the West Coast Eagles was Ebony Marinoff. Now, Niamh, I don't know about you, but like, we're not contact sport. You played a little bit of camogie, but if someone came at you like that and broke your neck, I'm sure you wouldn't want to see them for quite some time.
Yeah. No, I know certainly, like, look, we're wishing Bríd obviously the best recovery. Like, it was amazing to see that she was actually up and walking around. And I think kind of reassuring people that you know, she is recovering, but it's a very scary incident. And, you know, she just moved over, like she's kind of uprooted her life, moved over to Australia to play, and they'd spent so much time in isolation and quarantining and everything. And then, you know, the first game out, really, she really hurt herself. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Like I don't know what Bríd's opinion on the tackle is, whether she felt that it was you know, a fair tackle or not, but obviously it was a very dangerous tackle and something that, you know, could have been so detrimental and life-changing for her. So she was very lucky that she actually is up walking around and stuff at the moment. But yeah, it's very scary, and we just felt for her, you know, having just gone over. Couldn't believe it, like literally couldn't believe it, because we've been speaking to her before she went over, and, you know, hopefully we'll have her on for a takeover down the line now, but we had thought that she was going to be able to give us all an insight into that Australian life and into AFLW, but yeah, just like the way things changed for her, and now she's just recovering, but yeah, very scary incident.
Yeah. It's actually nice that they that Sydney still actually have her involved, like in the team. Like she's in all the team photos. She does like quite a bit. I know she was joking in the article that she's got 40 babysitters. But I think even though she mightn't have been able to comment on she might have been able to comment on the tackle itself. I think an AFL legend whose name is beyond me at the minute, but a couple of the AFL legends, I think, actually were on like TV and radio, like on the AFL like news sites or whatever, saying that they felt the tackle was beyond. But again, I think it's very subjective. I think it depends. But I think where she got very upset was how once Ebony had got off with the ban, she felt the blame was turned on her, and especially the commentary that would have taken place on social media, the bits of Bríd can't take care of herself, that she shouldn't be on the pitch, you know, different things like that, if she doesn't know basically how to enter into a tackle and things like that. Look, I obviously don't know. I only know from talking to people. My brother plays it over in Sweden, and from what he basically says is that even if you know how to look after yourself, the way Ebony came in was so quick that you couldn't have possibly been able to like contort your body in order to sort yourself out, if that makes sense. But look, again, it is subjective. It is completely open. But I think I do agree with you. We wish Bríd all the best. It's great that she's up walking and she's able to play with her son and different things like that. Because I suppose at the end of the day, as passionate as all we are about sports, I think it really brought into consideration basically the fine margins that exist in sport. And I think that is important. But in other positive AFLW news, Aisling Sheridan of Cavan scored the first goal in the AFLW season, funnily enough, for Collingwood on Friday night. So she was actually on the double, but Sarah Rowe of Mayo missed out through injury. So Sheridan had an opener to remember against Carlton, who actually were favourites before even a ball was kicked. And Aisling scored 2 goals and inspired her Pies side to a 33-27 win in front of a sellout crowd at Icon Park. Niamh, I just want to ask you one question, which is, if you were watching the game, and if anyone was watching the game, were you, 1, jealous of the Tans and the fitness, and 2, were you jealous that they could go to a game?
Yeah, they're so lucky to be able to play at the moment, and you know, from people that are able to play sport, but also to go out and enjoy sport and to be there in the crowd and you know, being part of the atmosphere. It's something that I think is a bit unimaginable for us at the moment, you know. Like for club level athletes at the moment, it's a matter of like months. Like we don't know if we're going to get to compete this year, and we're lucky that you know, elite athletes are able to compete and to continue pushing boundaries, which is brilliant, and I think important for people's careers and their development. But yeah, it's crazy to think that people are able to do that on the other side of the world. And I know some other countries have really gotten the cases down and have been able to manage getting back to some sense of normal life. So yes, incredibly jealous. The weather here is a little bit dreary at the moment, so a bit of sun wouldn't go amiss at the moment. But look, we're just through January, so we know that in a couple more months we'll be back out enjoying some good weather, hopefully. But look, we can still get out and about. Running in the rain is not the worst thing. Wouldn't really recommend cycling at the moment. We took a few tumbles over the last few months in bad weather and cycling. So any novice cyclists, stay inside. I think during this one they go running instead. But look, we'll carry on with how they are, and we'll just admire the Irish players from afar. So I know you have some news on Sinead Goldrick as well. It's brilliant to see that she's over there as well. There's so many Irish footballers over there playing, and it's great that they have such opportunity.
Exactly. I'll run through very quickly the rest of the scores. So as Niamh said, Dublin Sinead Goldrick was in action for Melbourne Demons as they defeated the Gold Coast Suns 56-35. Dublin's Sinead Goldrick had 7 disposals and 2 marks during the game. So I think she plays as a back, so much different to the scoring. People were obviously wondering where was Niamh McAvoy and Lauren McGee. They did not feature because they are just out of their 14-day mandatory hotel quarantine, and they just came out last week. So fitness obviously a thing there. Aileen Gilroy helped the North Melbourne Kangaroos to an emphatic victory over the Geelong Cats in the opening round of this season's women's Aussie Rules campaign. The Melbourne outfit scored 11 goals as they swept the Cats aside in a remarkable match which finished 71-9, a bit of a hammering there. Orla O'Dwyer, June star for Tipperary, also enjoyed a winning start to the campaign as her Brisbane Lions proved too strong for Richmond at the Swinburne Centre. She started the game at left wing and added one behind in the 41-12 victory. Anya Tiggs, Fremantle Dockers, they were too strong for Cora Staunton's great Western Sydney Giants. They were obviously missing Bríd Stacks. She's recovering from her injury at the minute. So Teague, however, she didn't feature and is set for an extended spell on the sidelines as she is currently recovering from a knee injury. However, Cora Staunton played at full forward. She was kept scoreless in the 58-28 defeat. There was no Irish involvement in St Kilda's 51-42 win over the Western Bulldogs on Friday. And some news just coming in is the Adelaide versus Fremantle and the great Western Sydney versus West Coast Eagles game has been postponed due to COVID restrictions. So these are 4 games that were of interest to Irish fans. We obviously are awaiting the teams list to be released so we know if there's any Irish involvement, but given how everything's been going, it seems there should be. So that's our AFLW wrap up. If anyone is interested, it is on TG Cahir. I think they are deferred games on a Saturday evening. And if anyone is interested in following it, it's AFLW Ireland on social media. So definitely get behind it. We are hoping to have AFLW Ireland President Michael Curran on soon to talk to us, and he'll basically give myself and Niamh a tutorial on basically how to watch the game. Because we're going with the flow here. But Niamh, big weekend in athletics, and you have a very special mention that you want to give a shout out for here.
We do. So obviously we know that the Her Sport Awards, the winners were announced over the weekend. So a big special mention to Ciara McGean on winning the Her Sport Athlete of the Year. She had a fantastic 2020. Really excited for her to get this award. 3 national records. 1 indoor and 2 outdoor records in 2020. So it's brilliant. Delighted for her. So hopefully we'll be catching up with Ciara later in the week to talk about 2021, winning the award and what's in store for 2021. I think at this point we should also mention there's very sad news in the last week at the death of Jerry Kiernan. So we're sending our condolences to his family when that was affected by the news. Very, very sudden, I think, for most people. And Jerry did coach Ciara for a number of years. So Ciara actually raced last week, but was disappointed with her performance. And I think she mentioned, that his death impacted her on the track more than she expected, and she said she's not one to make excuses, but obviously this is something that was very shocking to her, and he was a very important figure for her in her athletics career. So we're looking forward to speaking to Ciara later in the week. We'll try and keep the spirits up. There's been some brilliant things in athletics at the moment. So we'll just, try and keep everybody a bit more cheerful after this news. But Nadia Power, the 800 meter indoor record. So I guess we'll dive into that a little bit. So that was at the Vienna International Meet. We know that Nadia is looking towards Tokyo and hopefully to qualify And I think that she's getting faster and faster. And, you know, she's actually racing this weekend again. I think it's in Paris. Sorry, not Paris, in France. Is it in Paris? It's in France. I cannot declare that it's in Paris. But yeah, she's in action. She's in action again this weekend, which is really exciting because, you know, she just had such a great year last year, and she actually knocked off over 3 seconds off her PB to run that 2:02:44. So that's a substantial amount of time over such a short distance. So it's brilliant to see her, you know, really getting into her stride and gaining success. So yeah, Shifra Carrick-Butner's record was set in 2018. So she got in there with the 0.02 and just picked Shifra. It's great to see there's such talent at the moment in the middle distance category, because Shifra is there. You have Kira, you have Claire Mooney. You know, there's lots of athletes that are up there in those 2:02, 2:03, 2:04 times. I kind of indoors, and then you kind of look at outdoors and compare as well. I know obviously the indoor versus outdoor times are slightly different, but I know we have Alana Lally on doing a takeover tomorrow actually, and she has, I think, a 2:04 for outdoors. So look, there are some girls that are coming very fast. They're all putting in the work to try and push the boundaries in Ireland, but also push each other on. I think it's great when you have so many people you know, really striving for more, and it just makes everybody get faster. So it's really exciting to see. Then we had Sarah Lavin. So Sarah ran a personal best of 8:24, and she came fourth in the 60-meter hurdles. This is the first race for her of 2021, and she also has her sights set on qualifying for Tokyo. She's experienced a few injuries, I believe, a couple of years ago. So it's really great to see her in action. Like, she's somebody I think that works hard at looking after herself and kind of the conditioning to make sure that she is, you know, at peak performance. And she did really well. Like, she did well at nationals as well. You know, in the sprint distances, which is brilliant. So she will actually be racing this Wednesday at the World Indoor Series Silver Meet. And then we had Kira Neville. So we have 2 Limerick girls in action. So Kira got another personal best. She ran 7:30 in the 60 meters. She has been really, really strong, I think, the last couple of years. And she actually did a takeover recently on her sports. If anybody wants to get to know her a little bit better, over and check it out. Just the talent that's there in the sprinting disciplines in Ireland has really improved, I think, in the last few years. Again, lots of young athletes coming up and pushing each other on. So yeah, it's great to have some racing. I think we're all glad to see that some people are getting the opportunities to race. And while again, you know, club athletes might be just sitting at home, at least there is content that we can consume and we can support the athletes. I know it's not domestic racing at the moment, but we can support people from home and, you know, catch some of the action on, you know, video. And you know, it mightn't be live, but you'll definitely get some of the clips on the internet somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, like, one of the talking points as well over the weekend was how Irish athletics cancelled their indoor meets. I think it was for February was when they were going on. So as you were saying, even though at the minute it's a bit of a disadvantage for the club and the local people who are kind of sitting here, it's great that these girls, as we were kind of discussing last week or 2 weeks ago with Nadia, it's great to see these girls taking the risk and actually benefiting, learning, and I suppose growing from it more so importantly. I remember, was it the last, like pre-COVID, the last athletics champions, I was doing an event with Ailish McSweeney because she works at Pep Talk as well. And Ailish was even saying herself, like, this is as competitive of a group of women as you'll possibly get, probably like for quite some time. Like, you know, she was like, always there's been like 1 or 2 who've been kind of running out in front and just kind of dominated races. But now you've just got such a mix where it's actually hard to judge. And as we were saying about Nadia and even like Sarah Lavin and all these girls, like, they necessarily mightn't have been ready for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, but you can guarantee with the times and the races that they're putting in at the minute, they're ready for 2021 Tokyo. Whether they'll get there or not is another story, but at least now they have the capabilities, they have the race experience, which I think is super, super important. And they basically have the stuff that maybe the local athletes here might necessarily have that hopefully wouldn't put them back. I'm going to say too much. But I think it is super, super important. And as you were saying, one, it's great for them, but two, it's great for us because it gives us a good bit of content. But I think overall, it's nice to have someone abroad that we can root for, and that we can definitely get behind. And I think Nadia, Sarah, and Kira, they're definitely three girls that we could definitely go for. And as you said, if people want to know more about them, check out Her Sports Instagram and check out the takeovers that they took, because they are very personable, they are very fun, like all of them. Like they are like good crack.
People ask lots of different questions and get to learn a lot about them. So the athletes have been great at kind of sharing insights and sharing what life has been like through COVID, and what training is like. And just there's so many. We've learned so much about the evolution of people's careers, whether they started at 6 years old running or 16. So Amy O'Donoghue would say that she started at athletics kind of late. She was in Irish dancing before, and she came away with a 1500 meter national title this year. So they're definitely inspiring people along the way, and it's brilliant to be able to have the platform to share their stories. But I think I was actually speaking to Amy last week, and she's hoping, I think, to get some racing abroad. It's just so hard to know at the moment because they're after cancelling an outdoor meet in June in the UK. So it's difficult to know what the situation is going to be as we go forward. But I think Nadia has actually been abroad and she's not returning to Ireland, so that she can continue to attend some of these meets within all the countries, because I know it's very difficult for people to make that decision. Like she's not returning until all the races. I don't think there's necessarily a date on it at the moment. It's just kind of play it by ear and get the training done and keep doing as best she can. But that's, I guess, the domestic news that we have. We'll be catching up with some of those girls soon to chat about their experiences. But we have a few more interesting stories. I guess we'll go to Barcelona and Real Madrid protest. I know you're a big soccer fan we have here.
Yeah, so you're really going to test my geez, I went full Irish there. You're going to test my Spanish skills now, aren't you? Yeah, so you're right. So Barcelona, Real Madrid, I think some of the Atletico Madrid girls were involved in it as well. So El Classico Femenino was occurring just there over the weekend. Barcelona playing Real Madrid. This is Real Madrid's second year as part of La Liga Iberdrola. So just for a little bit of context, in case people aren't sure, just because I love talking Spanish football, it's like my favorite thing to do. So the La Liga Iberdrola and all the women's games are currently under the federation. So that's RFEF. You may have seen them referenced a couple of times on Twitter. So the RFEF federation is separate to La Liga men's. So what Lionel Messi, Barcelona, and Karim Benzema and all of them play for Real Madrid, that is a separate entity in itself. So the RFEF is currently under the government's protocols for COVID-19, which are different again to La Liga, who are under their own thing. Now, La Liga are fortunate that the owner or the president of La Liga, Javier Tebas, his brother, funnily enough, is actually making the vaccine over in UPenn for COVID-19. So just a random fun fact there. So when all these games are being cancelled, so I think it was 4 Barcelona games that were cancelled. So Barcelona went down to Madrid about 3 weeks ago. I think the mad snow was down in Madrid. And they basically, not to be dramatic when I say this, they risked COVID lives, sure, but they also risked their own lives in terms of going down in snow and having to wait there for 3 days in order to see was a game going to be played. The team that they were playing, it was a cup game, so they were a bit lower down. I think they were an semi-pro team, I'm going to say, more than anything else. They basically couldn't play because they had no team. Barcelona went up to the Basque Country to play again. They had no team to play. Real Madrid were in the same position. So there was no team for either of them to play for the last 4 weeks. So they're now 3 games in hand in order to get there. So at the exact same time on Saturday, all the players from Barcelona and Real Madrid released a statement basically demanding that the RFEF, so that's the federation, come together, demand better COVID-19 protocols. So what they want is a joint way for the COVID-19 to be restricted. They want the teams who have, I think, is it 14, you're allowed, even with positive tests. So if you can put forward 14 players, that's grand enough for a team in La Liga, but not so much for the RFEF. So they're basically asking for those protocols to be implemented. They're asking for basically better testing. They're asking for the other teams to restrict their movements a bit better. I think it is a bit tricky because a couple of them are working in the real world. You know, not a lot of them are on the same pay grade as Barcelona or Real Madrid. They don't have that financial power behind them. So it is difficult at the minute. But one thing at the end of their statement, which I thought was quite powerful, because in Spain, things have to get a bit dramatic kind of towards the end of any statement. So you always find there'll be like a grand statement of some sorts. Which some would be like, you know, Catalonia forever. Some would be a la Madrid, like all hail Madrid, different things like that. But this time they wrote, we want better, we want football, we want women's football. So the idea is that they're not resting unless they get women's football. They also stood motionless for a few seconds after kickoff in protest. And yeah, they basically want to get their point across to the RFEF. This is the second time, I should highlight, that they have been in negotiations with the RFEF. They had a very infamous collective bargaining agreement just before COVID, where the players actually refused to kick off the season because they felt they weren't getting their fair share of pay off of the RFEF, and they felt that the conditions weren't as good as what they should have been. So it's a fraught relationship. It's intense. Barcelona are top of the league. They actually won 4-1. They're top of the league. Real Madrid are in second, but they are 3 games behind the rest of them: Atletico Madrid, Leganés, Athletic Bilbao, and all the other teams who would be in general competing with them. I suppose the main concern for Barcelona, they have Champions League, they've Cup. Oh no, they don't have Cup. Sorry, they were knocked out. So they have Champions League. They want to get these games played ASAP so they can focus on their Champions League. It will be interesting to see what the RFEF will come out and say, or as they call them in Spanish, the RFAAFA. You know, that's my Spanish there for you. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be curious to see what will happen. Given how slow the RFEF are in terms of changing, I can't see any movement anytime soon, but you never know, maybe with COVID and different things like that. But I think it's a lot to look out for, and it is of interest. But Niamh, I know there is something you are passionate enough to talk about. You want to bring in Joe Biden, President-elect, into the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I think something we can't ignore is the statement that Biden put out this week. So Fox News and the New York Times are saying that Biden's political correctness could threaten women's sport. He has unconditionally, across the board, supports LGBTQ inclusiveness from the military to athletics. So this is something that has really caught the attention of a lot of people over in the US, and it's obviously a topic that the world are together trying to figure out. You know, everybody wants to see anyone that wants to participate in sport able to participate in sport, but obviously it's a bit difficult to figure out what the best way forward is for all the athletes, whether it's you know, male athletes, female athletes, whether they were born or whether they have transitioned. It's something that is just going to take a little bit of time to get through and to find the fairest way for everybody that's been involved. So Joanna Harper, I thought this was interesting. She's a medical physicist who is a transgender runner herself. She told the Associated Press in 2019 that the gender identity doesn't matter, it's the testosterone levels. Trans girls should have the right to compete in sports, but cisgender girls should have the right to compete and succeed too. How do you balance that? That's the question. So I thought that was really interesting that she came out and said that. You know, she obviously has the knowledge and the understanding of the medical background of it to understand, but she also has her personal experience in that she wants to compete in sports as well. So yeah, it's just something that I think is quite difficult. I know we saw earlier in 2020 in October, World Rugby concluded that safety and fairness cannot presently be assured for women competing against trans women in contact rugby. So they made the decision that at international level, trans women wouldn't be allowed to compete. So we look at a bit of the statistics in relation to this. So the research that they conducted said that there is at least a 20 to 30% greater risk of injury risk factors when a female player is tackled by someone who has gone through male puberty. It is known that biological males whose puberty and development is influenced by androgens, I hope I said that right, testosterone are stronger by 25 to 50%, are 30% more powerful, 40% heavier, and about 15% faster than biological females. Trans men are permitted to participate in men's contact rugby, but I think the grayer area is trans women. I think people are very fearful in some of the contact sports about the injuries that could happen, and everybody's really just looking out for the safety. And then you go and look at some of the other sports where it may be power-based or speed, and the testosterone benefits that people experience as they grow up. And I think it's at elite level, it's going to be figured out, I feel, sooner at elite level than it is at club level, but you also have to start thinking about it. And I think different countries are starting to try and figure out like how they're going to accommodate everybody. And it is important that there is a place for everybody to play sport. But I know there's been, I think we hear maybe about it a little bit more, stories coming from the US, where, records are being broken, or I think in basketball, there's been a couple of stories where people that identify as women are playing basketball, and it's just very difficult for the girls that are born female. So it's a grey area. I think in relation to the rugby, I have another piece on it here. It says, as a result, the new guidelines do not recommend that trans women play women's contact rugby on safety grounds at the international level of game, where size, strength, power and speed are crucial for both risk and performance, but do not preclude national unions from flexibility in their application of the guidelines at the domestic community level of the game. And there's one more interesting piece here, actually. Let me find it.
I was going to say, Niamh, like while you're looking for that, I can remember, and the only reason I remember this is because I did an article about it when Caster Semenya, that all the stuff came out about her. But there is a Finnish endurance skier, Eero Antero Mantiranta. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not Finnish at all. But she basically has a condition which causes high hemoglobin and increased oxygen capacity due to an inherited mutation in one of her genes. So it's basically a similar enough thing that you would see in a trans athlete. Now, she's actually allowed ski properly in among her kind of grouping and different things like that. And people have complained about her. I know it's kind of a little bit kind of different things, but a lot of the circumstances, you need obviously a lot of oxygen capacity to be an endurance skier. And a lot of the girls actually wanted to rule her out because they felt she was already at a biological unfair advantage. And I think that's something that I saw kind of a similar thing kind of with Caster, kind of more so, was just the level of, as we were kind of saying off air, because it's natural, I think it's harder to even regulate against as well. Like, it's not something that, you can possibly kind of dive into and be like, oh, do this, do that. Because at the end of the day, as Caster would have said herself, there are human rights, right? Like, they have the right to privacy and they have the right to equal autonomy over their body, which is something as well that's a bit tricky in order to navigate. So, like, I suppose, when do you divide in terms of a working environment and a global environment? When does that divide break down your right to privacy? Is it when you step foot on a track? Is it when you step foot into employment? Is it when you do all these things? So I think these are some questions, I think, that unfortunately sport can't necessarily answer, because I think sport as an entity isn't big enough to rule overall kind of on all that kind of sort of thing. But I think it is definitely tricky. I think it's something that they will find very hard to navigate, because either way, one side of the argument is going to be left fierce angry and fierce let down and fierce up against it. For the runners who naturally don't have this competitive advantage, are you going to settle for second place all the time? Do you work harder, potentially bust a gut and ruin your life and your body in order to achieve first? For what, like a moment of happiness? Like, I'm not really too sure. It's very tricky. And then on the flip side, if you're a Caster and if you're some of these trans women, are you going to put yourself into such a poor mental state and be open to these abrasive and aggressive kinds of natural testing just in order to win a medal? It's the same argument, just on the flip side. It's so hard to see where this could possibly be, where the line could be drawn if that is the case.
Yeah, I think, look, I think the situation in relation to Caster Semenya and other athletes that have similar experiences with her is different because they have been born that way. And I absolutely sympathize with transgender athletes, and I believe there is a place for them in sport. It's just a matter of figuring out how it's going to be fair on everybody, you know? And I think the fact that a medical professional came out and she expresses her understanding in the situation and can see the difficulties on both sides. But there's the piece that I was looking for earlier actually here is a groundbreaking new study on transgender athletes has found trans women retain a 12% advantage in running tests even after taking hormones for 2 years to suppress their testosterone. So I know what they're trying to do is evaluate like when is it fair for trans athletes to compete in these competitions. So it's saying that this indicates the current IOC guidelines may give trans women an unfair competitive advantage over biological women. So it's about kind of evaluating, like, is there going to be a time where somebody has been taking testosterone suppressants for long enough that they can then fairly compete against biological women? I don't know. I don't have enough of a scientific background at all to know this, but maybe that is something that is possible down the line. Or is there going to be enough competition for people that want to play sport and are trans athletes to compete against each other? I don't know. I think at the moment that piece is too hard because people's interests are in so many different sports. So the fact that they're a minority is harder to pull together enough competition, and because people are going to be based in different parts of the world and all this, like, that it's going to be very difficult to organize competition from that respect. And then I think the real difficulty is going to be elite competition. I think, to be honest, trans women won't be allowed to compete in international competition. That would be my gut feeling at the moment, unless the science can get it to a level playing field, we'll call it. I think at club level and in school, like, I know people are trying to support people that are going through transitioning and trying to support, obviously, the people that are participating in school sport and club sport. I feel like there might be a bit more leniency there. When people are playing for fun and, you know, kind of just growing up participating in sport, I think there might be a bit more room to have trans athletes compete in that space. I think there's going to be a really big learning curve, and I know there has been pushback in the US from the pieces that I mentioned earlier in relation to basketball, in relation to athletics, because you're seeing records being smashed, and like that's essentially what it is. So if there's no regulation on when what period or how long they have to be on testosterone suppressants, if that's not outlined, all of these competitions and records and everything are going to be broken by trans athletes, which then makes it very demotivating for your biological women. But I think it's very difficult. I do not envy the people that have to figure all this kind of thing out. There's 17 states, I believe, in the US.
I was going to say, can I just throw a minor spanner in the works here? Because you're going to be like, why didn't you put this in the damn notes? But it just only dawned on me because
that's okay.
Over the weekend, New York Liberty point guard Laisha Clarendon, she's transgender and non-binary, and she announced over the weekend that they had just removed her breast tissue. She's got pictures up if anyone is interested in looking on Twitter, on her social. So she's actually one of the most out trans and non-binary players that are in the WNBA kind of at the minute. I think she is on their WNBPA, that's very hard to say, their Players Association at the minute. And I think she is kind of the opposite agreement, you know. She has generally been open about their identity, but felt that she was going to open herself out to hate, myths, and ignorance. But she decided to share the photo because she wanted trans people to know and see that we've always existed and no one can erase us. And funnily enough, the League, the Players Union, and the Liberty released statements each offering support to Leisha on their story. So Leisha's story is one of inspiration and courage. And as a takeaway from the emotional conversation that we have shared recently, my hope is that the WNBA's full support will extend far beyond the league. And that was Commissioner Kathy Engelbert who had said that. And then the WNBP obviously put out a similar enough statement that she's a great they're a great advocate, and different things like that. So even though a lot of athletes might necessarily be kind of pro it and pro trans, non-binary, non-cis athletes competing, Leisha is at the top of her game at the minute. She's an 8-year veteran. She averaged a career best of 11.5 points for New York last season. And they want you to know, Leisha wants you to know that they identify as Black, gay, female, non-cis, and Christian. And that was in a long Instagram post that she had posted in December. So they're the first athlete that I would know who's, let's call it out in terms of their trans and their journey at the minute. And it seems to be going well for them. But we haven't seen any reaction from the rest of the league as is. But from what I know, all the players are very supportive of Leisha and their journey. So it's a tricky one for sure. Is basketball one of those sports where, look, I suppose there is an advantage. I mean, you think testosterone, you think slam dunks, you think bodies hitting off each other and different things like that. So far for Leisha, it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Explain to me, sorry, I may have missed this at the start. Is she transitioning to be male or she's transitioning to be female?
Non-binary, so it's they.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole kind of.
Yeah, Leisha.
Sorry, I knew you mentioned that they had removed the breast tissues. That's the piece that kind of caught me there.
Yeah. No, so Leisha, so was a woman, now non-binary. So has no ID kind of that way. I would say maybe from a pure, and again, this is speaking pure non-medical science opinion here, I would assume that identifying as trans and non-binary, I don't think you're getting as much testosterone as what a normal trans athlete kind of would be one thing. But that's one athlete who I would know publicly, not personally, but I would just know them to see on the TV. They're someone who is, I suppose, thriving at the minute under their discovery to who they are, being more so than anything else. Another thing as well, while we're on it, is I was reading the IOC's testosterone policy. Not that I know anything that I'm talking about here, but their IOC policy indicates that 99% of women at the minute racing have testosterone levels less than 3 nanomoles per litre. They want to reduce the current qualifying level from 10 nanomoles per litre to 5. And Ross Tucker, who gave evidence for Caster Semenya and other born with high testosterone levels, or trans athletes who are transitioning with high testosterone levels, apparently if they were to run an 800 meters with suppressed testosterone levels, so that's going from 10 nanomoles per litre to 5 nanomoles, it could shave an 800 meter time by between 5 and 7 seconds. So that's the evidence Ross Tucker put forward.
Yeah, I think other arguments that I've heard in relation to this are the fact that, an amount of work can be done before transitioning. And what they say about it is, like, a lot of the athletes and a lot of people that transition don't really do it until they're in their teen years or have gone through puberty. And I think that's part of the difficulty in navigating the landscape. I think it's a bit easier maybe to manage the situation if it's an athlete that has not gone through puberty because they haven't had the physical benefits of the testosterone from somebody that's born male. So I think that's where the most difficulty lies. And again, if they can manage to either get it to a level that's fair for everybody, or come up with an alternative solution that everybody can compete in a fair manner. I do see it being quite a challenge in elite sport. I think because there's money involved in it, because it is world records, national records, And that's your top level sport. I see that being the most challenging thing. I know you mentioned employment and other aspects earlier. I think people have their privacy there, and I think that, you know, lots of people are able to kind of lead their lives privately in that respect, and in other aspects of life. But I think when it comes down to head-to-head racing or competing, whether it's tackling and that, I think it's the games are based on, kind of fairness, opportunity for everybody, and it's just about making sure that everybody's getting the same chance, really. I know with Caster, like, she's unfortunately for her, like, there's been so much attention, so much difficulty with her life. Like, everybody has invaded her privacy, and it's been so difficult for her over the last number of years to try and be, competing at the top level. And, this is something that she couldn't control, She simply was born this way. And to have everybody talking about her and trying to figure out what the fairest thing is, it's very challenging. But I think really when it comes down to sport, I think all sports, it's a physical game. You're asking your body to perform, and it's the measurement. So that's, I think, where unfortunately trans athletes are going to be evaluated. And I think if you're happy not being an elite athlete, and you can let that go as a trans person, I mean, you'd probably be happier to be able to just close the door on sport, but that's not for everybody. I mean, look, somebody else that I can think of is Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn competed as Bruce, won the gold medal in the decathlon 10 for men. Yeah, so like won the gold medal, had a career, an athletic career as a man, and then transitioned much later in life. And again, that's not something that everybody can do. And I know Caitlyn has spoken about wanting to transition much earlier, and I know that there's a lot more acceptance, I feel, now than there was when Caitlyn was going through that a number of decades ago, really, and a lot of things have changed. Like, we know we watch things change all the time. It would be really interesting, like so interesting, to speak to Caitlyn and ask, like, would you have foregone your athletic career to achieve your dream and to be a trans woman? Like, would she have let that go? And I think it's very difficult for people to make that decision. And I know you mentioned, like, before, about like the mental health aspects of it and people's happiness. If somebody is a man or a woman is born a man or a woman and feels they should be the other gender, it's very difficult for someone to go through that and kind of feel like they're living in the wrong body. When it comes down to sport, like, a sport, is it worth it? I don't know. Like I love sport, but when it comes to like your personal happiness in relation to who you are, I would guess it is higher on the agenda than sport. But again, I can't say it's not something that would be very difficult to let go of. We must seek Caitlyn and see if Caitlyn will speak to us about this topic, just to get a perspective, and to really, like, someone that was top of the world in their sport, could they have let that go, or how would she see the landscape for everybody now? How does she see the fair way for people to compete? Because maybe it is much different, because she obviously lived a life as a man for such a long time, and went through her transition much later. But she was born a certain height, went through the testosterone, like, was physically trained as a man, and I think it takes quite some time for those benefits to kind of reduce back to a fair level, maybe for biological women. But I
Yeah,
don't know. Have you any other thoughts or opinions on it? It's
that's what I would say. Like in terms of actual transitioning, like I'm sure, like I was literally just reading here about Caster, and I suppose people who are transitioning and what testosterone levels do they possibly have, and if so, can you measure it and what? So apparently, women like Caster who are naturally high levels of testosterone, some of them can be as high as 25 nanomoles per liter. And we were just saying earlier about getting that down to, first of all, it was getting down to 10, and now it's getting down to 5. I don't know how long that takes to do it safely. I don't know what to do in order to get that done safely. I don't know if you do that safely, what the after effects are in terms of your body and how your body functions after, say, sport is gone. I remember there was an incredibly, I think it was borderline transphobic, the crowd who wrote it, but it got into the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2017. So they actually claim that Caster can outperform her opponents by 3%. But I think between 32% of that data was actually flawed. That's what I meant by apparently the crowd who wrote it weren't very, they had a set agenda in terms of proving she's not good for the sport. And I don't think in situations like that you can go in under the assumption that X or Y is bad for sport X or Y. I think if you are to go into one of these conversations, you do have to go in with a bit of an open mind. Hopefully, we have done that in some shape or form, but you have to go in terms of knowing what the results will be on either side. And I think that's where things can get a bit tricky. So, are you willing, in terms of full inclusivity, are you going to diminish maybe certain competitions in order to get full inclusivity? Or are you going to disregard inclusivity as a word and everything that it stands for? And are you just going to run an event solely based on people who are effectively the same and who have the same levels of testosterone and things like that? I didn't realize that even before Caster, that there had been 4 intersex athletes who gave up their gonads in order to be regarded as eligible to compete in their sport. So people have gone quite far in the past in terms of basically doing stuff to their body that necessarily a normal person might need to do every single kind of day of the week. I think it's incredibly hard to see. I think it's incredibly hard to put a ruling on. As I said earlier, people will be upset no matter what ruling is given.
Yeah.
I know CAS, basically, like the Court of Arbitration for Sport, did rule against Caster, if memory serves me right. So really, it's just a whole other conversation in terms of where, if you are a sporting organization, if you are, SEBCO, if you are head of any athletics within your country, if you're part of any company like that, even Swim Ireland, all these different places, you basically have to look at yourself and you have to look at your sport and you have to say, what is a level playing field for all? Is a level playing field for all omitting certain groups, or is a level playing field for all omitting the groups in but under suppressed testosterone skills? So it's definitely a tricky one. I think it is something that I feel like hopefully we learned a bit about, but I think, as you said, it would be great to reach out to someone who has experienced it in some shape or form and has the personal knowledge as well as some of the scientific background in order to make sure that we're going about this the right way. Because I think that's the other thing as well. People's feelings, mental health, and right to privacy are slowly getting hurt because of these kind of conversations. But I think, like everything, you have to be the first. You have to be the first. You have to risk it all. You might have to lose it all in order for someone else to basically go out and do what they take for granted, what someone else wouldn't have taken for granted maybe 2-3 years previous to that. So it's definitely a tricky one, but I think we've done it all, have we?
Yeah, no, I guess, look, I guess the final thing, like for me, the Caster Semenya situation and athletes that have experienced the same as her is different. Because, and I'm not saying that trans athletes have a choice. I believe that, if they feel they've been born in the wrong body, like, they want to make that transition. And I am not disputing the turmoil and challenges and everything that they go through, but I think it is slightly different to being born with extra testosterone. I think the other piece with the transitioning, and I really would love to know more about this, is if somebody is transitioning to be male, and I know we briefly discussed it, but they are taking testosterone. So at what point is that testosterone turned into doping? But I guess something that we actually didn't really touch on, and is only kind of coming to me now, is there's also the possibility of open games. So
don't they do that in rugby? Don't they do that in rugby already? No.
There are some sports that will have mixed teams, and maybe that's something that needs to be looked at more strongly, in that you have mixed teams, that it caters for everybody. And I mean, there's no reason that something like the 100 meters or 1500 meters, particularly at club level, wouldn't be open competition. Yes, you may see biological women trailing behind, but it gives everybody a chance to compete. And you may also see them get substantially faster from racing people that are faster all the time. And I think at a local level, that could be something that could really help the situation for everybody. Maybe some of your timed sports, it might not work as well, but I think some of your team sports, it could certainly be looked at, and maybe an adjustment of the rules for the safety aspects. So I know in rugby, it might be quite challenging, but something like that, there are sports that I think could be okay. Like soccer should be fine, for mixed, because your tackles aren't as aggressive, we'll say, as rugby. From the physical perspective, I think just something like rugby and American football, could be quite a difficult one to navigate. But I think there are sports actually out there that maybe looking at an open competition, because it's not to say like at local level, it's not to say that someone's not going to go and say, actually, I want to run the 1500 meters against everybody. And we could see loads of talent, lots of girls. I mean, Katie Taylor fought boys as she grew up, and look at her now. She's an absolutely astonishing athlete. So maybe we've come up with some sort of potential solution to try and cater for everybody. But I think it's time we look for a few people to come and speak to us about this and try and give us a bit more understanding on it. I think, look, we know people that have race caster, and what is it like to be that person? I know Sonia has touched on that subject a little bit, but yeah, really to speak to a transgender athlete and understand their experiences and the value they have on athletics and on sport would be really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I think you're definitely right. I'm literally reading World Rugby's guidelines, and it says that a player over 12 years of age may play on a mixed gender team where no other option in continuing to play rugby exists. And then it lists out a rake of criteria that you need to get through in order to actually do that. So yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's something that could be definitely looked at. I think, as you were saying, it would be great. That's for us to work on. But it'd be great to see on both sides what the vibe and the opinion is. I can actually remember distinctly one Polish runner. Her name was Joanna. And that's the only reason why I actually remember her more than anything else. She basically tore into Castor in a post race interview. Like, she left nothing behind. Like, she was like, it was bordering on all the isms that exist in the world at the minute. Like, she was like, calling her like, derogatory names. She was like, saying like her calves are bigger than my body. Like, how dare she like be in this race? Different things like that. But no, it's definitely...
The difficulty is, though, I mean, you've watched those races, you've seen her race, and she is physically different. From a middle distance, from a biologically female-born middle distance athlete, she is different. She is more built. Like, Ciara has raced her. Like, Ciara McGeehan has raced her. And I mean, I don't know if Ciara would speak to us about it, but like, if you look at some of those 800 meter and 1500 meter races, she is stronger, and they don't have that biological advantage that she has. And I think the real challenge there is it's something that she was born with. So where is the fairness for everybody? And like, another thing I'll say is Caster is not the only one. I have always felt that like Caster has been borderline scapegoated because she stands out so much, because she is winning and performing all the time. There are lots of other people, and we've gone back and forth with this one a lot, but in sprinting, like absolutely in 100 and 200 meters, like there has to have people down through the history where they just haven't had the same testing experience as Caster has experienced, and just not really been identified. But it's because she's at the top. That's why she's being identified time and time and time again, is because she's consistently winning, and it's an obvious margin against her competitors. But the thing about it is, like, you could have somebody that doesn't put in the training, doesn't do the work, and doesn't achieve the same as results as she has. So I think that's the part of it there, is that she's like, look, there was the regulation is it from 400 meters to the mile?
Yep.
To me, that doesn't make much sense. Yeah. So if she runs 8s and 15s, then the mile is up. Like she's an 800 meter runner primarily, but to move up to the 1500 and focus on that, or up to the mile and focus on that, or to move down to the 400 is not out of the realms of possibility. And the fact that they came out and they ruled it from 400 to 1600 meters, for me, that's targeted. I can't see how it doesn't affect sprinting, and I can't see how it doesn't affect other distances. Maybe I'm completely missing something in relation to science, but like the fact that like Kipchoge is running, around the 2 hour mark. I know the 2 hour hasn't been officially broken for the marathon yet, and then you go and look at, say, what the women are running. There's a substantial difference there when it comes to male versus female in that scenario. So I can't see how, moving up and down the distances, it only is the 400 to 1600 meter races that are affected, and it goes well beyond athletics as well. It's not just one sport. But look, I think we should explore. I think we've lots to talk about. But if it's all right with you, I think we wrap this one up, or we might have people drifting off. But yeah. No, I think we've covered it, and if anyone has any questions and feedback, I mean, we'd love to hear it. I'm definitely talk about it down the line again.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. No, Niamh, I completely agree with you. I think people may be putting on their little timer at the end of this, but no, really appreciate you appreciate the fun we had, the good conversation that we had, and more importantly, I think what we should say is that the more we learn about this, the more information we get, and the more people that we can reach out to, we will certainly do that in order to broaden our horizons, to broaden your horizons. And more importantly, I think to bring a fairness and equality to the subject that I think has been missing from all the debates for quite some time. But Niamh, I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you, Niamh.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the next episode already.
Yeah, don't forget to follow us all across social at hersport.ie, at Joanne _Rex on Twitter, and on Instagram at hersport.ie and at Joanne OR. We will be back on Wednesday with a domestic paper review, where we will be talking about all the domestic news within Ireland and what's going on in the world. And we have a couple of special interviews lined up for you for the next few Fridays. So, Niamh, cheerio.
Cheerio.